Hey there. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Hello. Kate and I are particularly excited today to be sitting down with our guest, Tyler Remkus, who is a CCA student and a copywriter, and building from a part-time to a full-time eventually copywriting career. He's had some interesting experiences, and I think a lot of the insight that he has to offer will be, if not just interesting, also of use to a lot of you guys listening. So Tyler, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you. I'm so happy to be talking to you, and wouldn't have imagined it last year when I started the program. So it's cool.
So what brought you into the program? What got you interested in copywriting?
So in my previous career, I was an officer in the Air Force, so on active duty.
So pretty much similar. Same thing.
Yeah, right.
Same industry.
Surprising common threads, actually. So yeah, it's I think so. So I had been thinking for a few years, like that. I was ready to move on and do something else, but didn't really know what that was. And I think what happened to me is like I started to kind of put myself in a little bit of a box where, a lot of my friends, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they go and work for a defense contractor doing, something very closely related to what they did in the military. Or a lot of them go and sell real estate, which there's nothing wrong with that either, right? But we kind of like, I think, default into safe choices. So one day, having never heard of a copywriter really, but I saw one of your Facebook ads, really well written Facebook ads, very convincing. Yeah. And then I watched the video, the intro video, and I was like, wow, this seems pretty cool. Like, it got my attention right away. Kind of got me excited about what was possible. And I've always liked to write and have done a lot of writing in the Air Force. So I then showed it to my wife because she's got to be on board with whatever I'm gonna do. So and she was like, yeah, this seems legit too, right? She said this seems perfect for you. It's really like checks the boxes on your interests. So so that got me started in the CCA, and then it was totally easy after that, right? I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and became a great copywriter. And it was no. Lots of self-doubt, like, oh, maybe I'm not going to do this. And then, so it was like this whole, like, almost a year before I like really buckled down and started pitching and all of that, and started working with a couple of different designers. So that's the short version of it. Yeah.
I want to dig into, though, because I think so. Full context, when I noticed you in the copywriting group, you were on a similar timeline as my husband, who also Army, but was getting out of the Army. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's kind of following that same path. But I think it's interesting is you did the practice, the exercises and whatnot. You were building, your skills and doing it while still working full time, which is obviously a challenge. So whether people are in the military or not, I mean, a lot of people are doing that parallel path of, let me figure out what I'm doing over here while I'm still trying to, provide for my family, make a living, go to work. How did you manage to balance that time period, which everyone goes through that time period, I feel like, and it's an intense thing to balance.
Yeah. So there was, so for a while I did not balance it, right? I was like, oh man, I'm going to do this. And I think I did the opposite of the advice, Nicki, that you give at the beginning of the course. Like, pace yourself, take it, 15, 30 minutes a day, whatever. No, I really dug in and did a lot of it at the beginning because I was excited about it. But then I had to do some travel last summer, and I was so my last assignment in the Air Force was teaching cadets in the ROTC program. So for people not in the U.S. that may not know, that's basically a program for university students to become officers in the Air Force. So that's the teaching assignment I've been doing the last 3 years. And then I had to go to summer camp with our cadets, basically. So it was like long days, right? And yeah, I had a lot of personal stuff going on at the time too, right? So at that point, I was like, I'm just going to put this aside for a while. And then kind of at the end of last summer, it kind of took me a little while to pick it back up too. I was kind of like still monitoring what was going on in the group, right? Because I was, I enjoy reading whatever I post in there, but yeah, I wasn't really doing much of anything probably until like pretty late in the fall last year, just because I just got overwhelmed. And and there's always the self-doubt too, right? Like, oh, am I really that good of a writer? And I was kind of on the fence about freelancing too, which that's another part of like what I've been through here is like, yeah, I did do a few months of freelancing as we got it into the I kind of picked the course back up late in the fall, and then through the winter worked on it at a reasonable pace this time, and then started to finally send out some pitches roughly February of this year, and reached out to a couple of designers, which is really cool. I like reconnected with a friend from college, and I had like forgotten that she was a graphic designer, right? But she's got 10 years of experience now doing that. And so it's pretty cool. Like, so yeah, I actually got a couple of referrals from her, and that was cool. And then yeah, so I started to slowly get a little more bold in reaching out to people, and started to build a nice little bit of part-time income my last few months in the Air Force, and got some great experience. So it was just persistence, I guess, is what made it work ultimately.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I love that you are willing to share that you had some self-doubt, and you had some that stuff took you away from it, but that you came back to it. I think that everybody kind of thinks, well, I'm the only one who's feeling this doubt. Everybody else is doing just fine. Everybody else knows that this is the path, but I'm the only one who's feeling this. And this means that I'm the one who's not meant to do it. When it is absolutely to a person, at some point, everyone will feel that. So I think it's so fantastic that you're willing to, and I think too, quite frankly, I think the stereotype of like, well, this man's in the military. He clearly feels no self-doubt about anything. He's like, but I think it's
only
super duper. But that's really, really helpful. Thank you.
There's the spiritual teacher I like to follow that has this little mantra he says, where he just says, this is all part of it. Right. And so I like say that to myself a lot. Right. And I think about that with the copywriting experience too. Right. Like, you could just smoothly go through the course and immediately be successful. I think that happens to one or two people, it seems like, but not most of us. Right. And that's not the experience, right? And that wouldn't be a meaningful experience either, right? If it was just easy. And so like part of it is the personal growth that I think that comes with it. And that's been really big for me, just like the sending the pitches, reaching out to potential clients, reaching out to designers. I think there's been a lot of personal growth there for me, especially coming from the military environment where there's like this rigid rank structure, and what everyone's position is, right? And how you're supposed to talk to people. So for me, it was like super valuable to just as a person to like have to figure out, out of nothing, I'm going to create this relationship with this person to either write copy for them or to work with them if they're a designer, or just to network with some people too. And that was another cool thing, is just finding some cool people to network with along the way. So.
Yeah, I feel like you had to change your writing style. I imagine it's not like dear sir or madam. Very respectfully, Tyler.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point about the growth aspect. There is this idea that, well, if this is the path that I'm meant to be on, then once I find the path, well, then everything's just going to be easy. But that's not true about anything, right? It's not true about love. It's not true about marriage. It's not true about having kids. It's not true about about even like some of the, like something not even true about hobbies or vacations or anything like that.
Pets even.
Yeah, pets, right? Like,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Kate.
I was just say the paths are very, you know, kind of, you sometimes look back on yourself and then you go this way, and it's not, there's no path that's just, here it is to the top and straight line.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So how have you been approaching, now you're starting to think about moving into full-time eventually? How are you approaching that? Or how's your schedule changing, that kind of thing?
You landed a full-time job, right?
I did. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, so my last assignment in the Air Force, I was teaching in the university, which has been kind of interesting, the last year and a half. And so weirdly, I was spending a lot of time working from home in the last year, even though I was still in the Air Force. And so, so I had been doing that. It was going okay. I started doing the freelance work, got 3 small, energetic children at home and a dog at home. And it was a lot of time at home. So I was enjoying the freelance writing, and it was good. But so I did a couple, so about 5 months of that, I guess. And then I started very selectively applying to jobs. I applied to a couple of agency jobs, and then what I found is that if you really look, there are quite a lot of positions out there. The title's not copywriter, but copywriting is one of the required skills. So all kinds of marketing and communications roles that require copywriting skills. And so, what I eventually found was a full-time strategic communications position. It's at a big infrastructure development company. And so, our clients are mostly public sector clients, and it's really interesting work. So, and here in Alaska, it's really cool, all the infrastructure projects that are going on. So I'm flying down to Kodiak at the end of this month to meet with a couple of our stakeholders in a project down there. But it's really cool because copywriting is a huge part of the position. There's also some other things to it, just like public meetings and that kind of stuff for the projects that our clients have going on. But it's been really cool. And not something I ever would have ended up doing had I not gone on this little copywriting journey. So it was really cool. And, I think people, even if you're copywriting part-time, I think you don't really realize how much experience you're building up. And, that's, it is an in-demand skill, copywriting is. And for a couple of the positions that I spoke to employers that, just my little bit of what I felt like was a tiny bit of experience, they were actually pretty impressed with, and felt like I really had the knowledge to do the roles I was applying for. So it was cool. And
that's terrific.
Happy with where I landed. So I'm about two weeks in now, learning a whole lot. So
well, that's great. Congratulations.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I ended up with a really great company, and I'm working with all these engineers and architects and lots of really smart, educated people. Thinking about getting a sign for the desk that says "Explain it to me like I'm an English major." That's what I am. So, it's been cool.
So I know you're flying to projects and whatnot, but is it mostly remote? Are you staying based in Alaska? What's the setup like?
Yeah, so it's downtown Anchorage here. We've got an office. So it's great. So working in the office, some flying around, meeting with clients. The copywriting we do, it's like websites for the projects, right? So where the public goes and gets information on the projects. I've written one video script since I've been there, which was kind of fun. I hadn't done that before, so that was my first day, something. So, yeah, and writing scripts for our public engagement phone calls we do, and some public meetings and that kind of stuff, right? So you really start to think about, wow, there's so many things in the world that need to be written, and there's kind of like endless number of things. If you're a good writer, there's an endless number of things you could be doing. So yeah, and that's one of the things, like in the Air Force, right? I've done so much writing. It's all I would have thought to myself, right, like, well, that's not really relevant to any writing I would do on the outside, but I think it very much is, right? So just being able to write succinctly, focused on, like, hey, what's the impact of this to all the stakeholders, and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm finding all of that experience is really, really relevant. Yeah, so it's been good to be able to draw on that.
That's a great point. I would not have made that connection. Kate, I'm sure would have, but me being totally on the outside, I wouldn't have made that connection. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, and so I did, I worked at the Pentagon for a little while. So I was doing like staff work, and we would like answer congressional inquiries and that kind of stuff, right? And I would write like daily update emails to like general, whoever, right? And it's all very much what's the impact to the mission, right, is what they always want to know, right? And so it's very much the same thought process as of like thinking, hey, what's the benefit to the potential customer? So so all of that writing experience, I'm finding like it is really, really relevant. I think a lot of people in the military, I think, don't think of, they think like, oh, I'm in this particular career field, so I got to go and do that thing on the outside, instead of what skills have I developed along the way, right? And that's that when I kind of had that click for me, that helped me know how to go and sell myself in an interview, know how to write my resume better, right? Because it's focused on like, hey, what are the skills I have, and how do they match to the positions that I want to work in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a good point. I know you mentioned earlier too, we see it with a lot of our friends who get out too, who go to that safe kind of thing because it feels like this is the natural, I'm going to stay in the same lane. But I'm wondering how much you're willing to share in terms of, that can be a scary process, I think, for a lot of people, both military, but also just leaving their full-time job and deciding I'm going to take the plunge and go for something else. Did you feel that fear? I mean, I think there's an income angle to it. There's also just an unknown, am I qualified for this? And how you kind of bridge that gap between, especially for folks in the military who have an end date in mind. Okay, this is my ETS date, here it is. And then what's next? How do you plan to lead up to that? And how did that process go?
Yeah. Well, let me go way back here. So way back when I was between my sophomore and junior year of college, as I mentioned, I was an English major, right? So I had this moment of realization of like, hey, maybe I should start thinking about how I'm going to earn a living when I leave here, right? And so, and just at that time, I walked by this table with all these Air Force brochures, right? And I started reading about it. I read about all the benefits I could get by becoming an officer in the Air Force. And I was like, wow, that seems like pretty good route to go, right? So, there's part of me that, wanted the adventure, wanted to serve my country, all of that. But there's also the safety part of it too, in terms of like, hey, I have a ready-made identity and career path, and I know I'm going to have great health insurance and all of that stuff for the next few years. So I did that. And then I, finished up college, became a lieutenant, and went to, ICBM operations is my career field. So intercontinental ballistic missiles, so the big ones, you know, and that's, I went to training to learn to do that. And spent a few years, you know, sitting underground a lot of the time in Wyoming. And so it was, adventure, right? You know, getting out and seeing underground beneath fields in Wyoming. But it was a good experience. But I think even, about 3 or 4 years in, I was like kind of ready to move on and do something else. But it's just, it is really hard to let go of the security. You know, I had gotten married. We had our first child at that time. And it just did not make sense. I thought about going to law school for a while, you know, and then I was like, yeah, the math just doesn't work on that. And then, there have been all these different careers I'd kind of like kicked around, you know, over the years, and well, would it make sense for me to go do this? And I could never really find that thing that was kind of worth taking that risk, or that felt like I was going to be, you know, sufficiently successful if I went down that path. So I ended up being in the Air Force 11 years total before I got out. It was a lot of soul searching, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of, I'm definitely going to get out. Nah, I'm going to take this other assignment. I did that a couple of times. It's, I think being able to, and I think there's nothing wrong with that journey I was on either, right? So, you know, you do have to figure out how you're going to take care of your family, and you do have to, you only get one life, right? So you want to really evaluate all variables, make sure whatever you're going to go into is something that's going to make you happy.
So thinking about, obviously, family, 3 kids, your wife, I know military life can be super hard on families with travel, with the moves all the time and whatnot. Do you feel like this new job that you have, does that play into that aspect? Was that a factor in terms of being able to spend more time with your family and kind of have more freedom, I guess, in the sense of choosing where you live, where you go?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Yeah. So, that's been a big part of it for us. Is I determined, for me especially, the moves, the long TDYs, all of that stuff. I'm such an introvert, right? So like by the time I make friends somewhere, get a good support system, we're already ready to move on and do something else. And so, so that's been a big part of it. You know, it's just like, for like, you know, mental health, right? And like for being able to have healthy relationships and all of that, it was it's kind of time to give up that lifestyle. So, so what I'm doing now, we'll stay here. We wanted to stay in Alaska. We've got some family here, and we like all the bears and moose and all the trails we have down the street and all that kind of stuff. So, we wanted to stay here. Yeah, and it's really good, kind of stable situation I'm in. I'll have, as I mentioned, a little bit of travel here and there, but for the most part, just working full time in the office with some flexibility to work from home a little bit too. It's a really good situation.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure your travel trips aren't 6 and 9 months long.
Right. Exactly right.
Maybe a week long.
Yes. Yeah. Much more manageable.
Yeah. So what's next? So you kind of touched on where you are now. Is that kind of the plan? Are you going to keep freelance in the mix maybe, or maybe put that aside? What are your feelings there?
Yeah, so I've got one website I'm still trying to finish up for somebody. Yeah, so I'm gonna very selectively kind of maybe take a side project here and there, time permitting. But I don't think I'll be out like actively pitching. But I think that's one of the cool things about freelancing is you can pick pick what you want to do, right? And you can pick who you want to work with, which was something that took me a few rounds of clients before I realized I'm like, hey, maybe I don't need just like every client I can go find. So yeah, you can kind of pick and, you know, work with people you really want to work with. So that's good. Yeah, so I'm going to keep doing a little bit of freelancing very selectively, but mostly just focused on the full-time gig right now.
That's terrific. That's awesome. Congratulations on getting that position, and really the success for sticking with it, for getting started, sticking with it, coming back to it, and turning it into a full-time job. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, I thank you guys, right? Because you know, I never would have thought of copywriting as a possibility, and just the feedback that I've gotten in the Facebook group has been amazing, you know. And you know, I anytime I have self-doubt, if I like give feedback on a post in the group and I get a like from Kate, that's like validation, right? It's like, oh, I am a genius. So, yeah, just to be able to go there and get that encouragement, being able to post things and get feedback and feedback from the other students too has been really amazing. There's no other Facebook community like the CCA Facebook group. It's really pretty incredible. I'm not part of anything else where there's that level of engagement. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have some really, really fantastic students, yourself among them, obviously.
Yeah. And I have to say, what stood out about, I still remember to this day, some of your first exercises you posted, because I was like, he's concepting. You could tell that you didn't skip that crucial step in the process. So for anyone listening, concepting, so important.
Don't skip your steps.
Don't skip your steps. Yes.
So Tyler, if you had to, just to kind of, you know, put it all in put your entire career in a nutshell and all of your choices in a nutshell. If you had to offer some advice to someone who's maybe kind of thinking about copywriting, dipping their toe in it, maybe even someone who's maybe leaving the military and thinking about copywriting.
We've got a couple of people in the course still in the military, I know too. So yeah.
So what would you tell them?
Well, so what I mentioned already, so really assess what skills you have. And I think to do that, you have to think about, what do I actually do on a day-to-day basis? Which for me, when I looked at that, I've probably written more than I've done anything else while I was in the Air Force, right? Like, you know, I do the missile operations and all of this other stuff, right? But what actually takes up the most of my time was different writing projects, whether it's, you know, PowerPoint slides or performance reports or all of that kind of stuff, right? So, and that's what I enjoyed doing the most. So, you know, when you're looking at your skills, don't think about what have your job titles been, but what have I actually done, and what am I actually good at and enjoy doing. So, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is being able to reach out for help. And so, you know, I've ended up in a communications role, and I wasn't really even thinking about that until a networking conversation. I have a random person on LinkedIn that messaged me to ask about copywriting. And, you know, they were looking for communications roles. And when they told me about some of the things they had looked for, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty interesting, actually. You know, so, you know, is that conversation that kind of led me to where I am in my full-time job, and you know, and reaching out to designers along the way. And I found that reaching out to experienced people is okay, right? Like, I think a lot of the people in the course kind of box themselves into, I have to find someone that's at the same level as me. That's good. And that's probably important for the spec ads, but you can reach out to more experienced graphic designers too. And what I found is that people are actually really willing to give their time and help mentor and give advice and that kind of stuff. If you just say, hey, could I have 30 minutes? I just wanted to ask you some questions. And I really like, you know, these designs you've done, and show an interest in their work. Yeah, I had a couple of really great conversations like that with designers and with the business owners and other copywriters too. So yeah, I would say just a little bit of boldness in terms of the networking and reaching out to people. You can apply the same principles you use to pitch to go and network with people and to make those connections. So I would say spend some time doing that.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Yeah, this has been a fantastic conversation and very insightful. I think it's going to be, a favorite among our listeners. Yes. So Tyler, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us today. Also, by the way, thanks for your service as well.
And thank your family for all of their participation in.
Yes.
It's a family affair.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely will do that. No, thank you guys so much. And I was going to say too, if any, if there's anybody else out there that's separating from the military that wants to, reach out, you find me on LinkedIn, but I'm happy to have conversations with people who are kind of on the same path, so that they can absolutely reach out to me. That'd be awesome.
That's so generous of you, Tyler.
Which,
thank you
speaking
so
of,
much.
Where can they find you on the web, your website?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Your portfolio.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So, tylerremkus.com is my
Perfect.
website. So, and then, find me on LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch with me too.
Cool.
So,
We'll link to it in the show notes for people listening. So definitely check out the episode details if you want to check out Tyler's site and find him on LinkedIn.
Yes, absolutely. Hire this man. Although he's not taking a ton of freelance left. And so, make sure you send along your good projects if you actually want to work with him. Yes. Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I'm sure that everybody listening, quite frankly, I'm sure you guys enjoyed it just as much as Kate and I did. And for more, we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss any tips, tools, or tactics for copywriters by clicking subscribe right now. And of course, you can always find us over at filthyrichriter.com. We'll see you next time.